You may have noticed that the film industry is drifting further away from originality and focusing more on adaptation. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes they end up being the pixelated equivalent of 9/11. Have a guess where this one ends up. It's been many years since I've seen an episode for fear of butchering my own nostalgia, but for those of you who know me or have listened to some of my previous work, you'll know that the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers has always had a special place in my heart, somewhere between the left artery and the syringe full of orphans' tears. In a generic as fuck town, 5 generic as fuck high school students are getting on with their generic as fuck lives when some generic as fuck circumstances have them stumble across the power coins, which are a set of supernatural crystals and the power source to each individual ranger. Said crystals eventually lead them deep underground to a spaceship currently occupied by a talking transparency layer and what appears to be his butt plug. The pair inform the group that the coins have chosen them to become the new Power Rangers destined to defend the Earth, as well as informing them that Rita Repulsa, a former Green Ranger that was once led by the talking transparency layer back when he was the Red Ranger, has reawakened after being projected into the bottom of the ocean during her first attempt to dominate the world after betraying her fellow Rangers. This time she intends to steal the Zeo crystal, which sustains all life on Earth, because of course it does, and then obviously go from there. Due to it being located deep underground, Rita can't simply reach it even if she employed a coked up shovel. Instead she uses her power to raise her army, which seemed to be comprised entirely of 3D printouts of the thing's nutsack to take care of any resistance, while she gathers enough resources to bring back her old assistant Goldar, so he can get the crystal by ploughing through the Earth structure like I ploughed through your mom's anal hymen. So it's up to the transparency layer and the butt plug to train these post-pubescent wastes of jizz to stop Rita and Goldar from stealing the crystal and making Earth disappear from memory like a decent nu metal band. As I was watching the on-screen equivalent of Lionsgate digging up one of my treasured childhood pets before raping the fuck out of its corpse and charging me for the fucking privilege, I was desperately trying to work out who the fuck this disaster piece was made for. It certainly wasn't a movie made for the critic, because I'd rather use the projector it was played on as a suppository than have to watch it again. The pacing is atrocious, more on that later. The main cast tries so fucking hard, but the acting is on the same level as what you'd expect from a group of bored gap year pricks who decided to unearth their nostalgia in a horrific fashion. Bryan Cranston gave me the impression that the last place he wanted to be was in this movie. Expect the same from Ben Affleck in the next Batman film, by the way. Elizabeth Banks does a decent enough job as Rita Repulsa, but her efforts share the same amount of pointlessness with trying to catch a T-Rex's ball bag in a teaspoon. If you actually pay attention to this shit and not use it as background fodder whilst you're trying to desperately get laid before they sober and or wake the fuck up, you may have noticed that I'm using a slightly tweaked version of my Iron Man suit animation for the Power Rangers armor, and that's well because it seems like the costume designer had the same idea. It feels like they spent most of the time struggling to come up with something original, and as the last act of desperation stole some Iron Man figurines, twatted them into a pile of paint tins, nailed whatever debris could be found lying around the house on them, pitched the idea to whatever twat was clearly way too fucking busy not giving a fuck about costume design to realise what the fuck they were looking at. Said twat gives it the green light, and here we are with Power Rangers that look like they were scraped out of one of Iron Man's rape victims. Despite it being a 12A, there was no way in hell this was made for children. Not because the build-up was too deep and complex for a young mind and the final act brimming with violence that's way too graphic for a set of balls that are yet to emerge from a gooch. Fuck no, far from it. The reason why a child couldn't watch it is because they'd have to sit through 90 minutes of fuck all before it's morphin time. I'm not fucking kidding, the pacing really is that fucked. You have to wait for 90 whole fucking minutes of the Power Rangers movie for the Power Rangers to actually become the fucking Power Rangers. It's not like any cool shit happens during that period either. It spends the first 2 acts trying to be chronicle but fails on an embarrassing level. Only 3 of the 5 origin stories belonging to the protagonists are worth your time. Not a bad ratio I guess, but unfortunately the done to death issues with being the popular girl and the asshole jock kicked off the football team because, well, who gives a fuck anyway, are the 2 backstories that are focused on the most. So after what turned out to be near enough the entire duration of the 1995 Power Rangers movie, we finally get to the action, which wasn't by any means worth the fucking wait. The hand-to-hand combat involving the Power Rangers and the putties was about as well choreographed as an anger management seminar hosted by the Hulk. The inevitable meeting between the huge fuck-off robot and giant monster has been done better elsewhere, but what frustrated me the most about the action is that there was frequent cuts to the cast within the Megazord with some cheesy bullshit dialogue and necessarily sprinkled over the top of it, interrupting the flow like a kaiju-sized tampon. For those of you who may be on your way to watch this fuck you on a film reel in the name of nostalgia, then turn the fuck around and thank me later. It feels like the movie has decided to take inspiration from DC and completely remove the vibes created by their source material and replace them with a bleak and anxious atmosphere. The upbeat campness, comic relief and overall tone that formed the foundation of the original series simply wasn't there at all. Fuck, there isn't even a Bulk and Skull presence in this movie, which, considering they are statistically speaking the main characters of the entire franchise, is frankly insulting to anyone who gives a slight shit about the Power Rangers. There is literally no reason whatsoever as to why the movie couldn't have given this nod to the hardcore fanbase by ways of cameo appearance from the duo at the very least. Both actors are still alive and most likely would have loved to have been a part of the Power Rangers universe again. Even the people I've spoken to that wouldn't consider themselves fans of the series wanted to see them in this movie. I hope to fuck that the writers did want to include them in the storyline but had no idea how to do it. If that was indeed the case, then the writers should be hanged for treason against the geek culture, because frankly there are many opportunities where they could have been included. Why not have them work as janitors janitors at Angel Grove High School. Why not have them as random bystanders at one of the many pointless scenes? Oh my fucking god, there are so many pointless scenes. Hell, I would have probably been okay with having their instantly recognizable theme music set as a ringtone for one of the characters. Speaking of music, if you're planning to watch the Power Rangers movie for the psychotically cheesy soundtrack that fueled its predecessor's ridiculously quick-paced narrative, then forget it, because it exchanges the over-the-top guitar solos and mawkish vocals for a dreary and barely noticeable score that didn't contain a single note worthy of remembrance. Yes, there was about half a minute's worth of music paying homage to the original theme tune, but it lacked the gusto that we got from Ron Wasserman's music. Of course, there are Easter eggs dotted about here and there. Each one is quite easy to pick up, but gave me the impression that they were so reluctantly included. And overall, the movie appears to feel a level of shame towards its source material that could only be matched by the amount that Adam Driver should feel about his performance in The Force Awakens. So yeah, in terms of adaptation, The Power Rangers ends up about there. If you're going to do a modern-day live-action remake of, well, anything to be honest, not just specifically The Power Rangers, you should make sure it contains the same spirit that made its predecessor what it was, instead of having its most resembling feature be the fucking logo, and maybe not have your protagonist look like the Hulkbuster strap-on collection.